Hello everyone and welcome back to the Dog 3D Tips blog. This week I'm going to be showing you how we can rebuild a beauty pass that we've rendered out from VRay Next. And there's a lot of reasons for doing this. Obviously number one, it gives you control over the render after you've rendered. So if the client wants any changes or something doesn't look quite right, you have the flexibility afterwards to be able to change it. So I've just got this really simple scene here, just of an interior. And I'm going to make some changes to the render settings to allow us to rebuild the render pass correctly. So what I'm going to do first is just go into the render settings, and under color mapping we're going to want to change this from exponential to linear multiply, and we need to change the gamma to 2.2 if it's not already. And under mode you want to change this to don't affect colors, only adaptation, and we want to uncheck linear workflow. So I'm not going to go into the specifics of why we have to do this, but basically you won't be able to rebuild your render passes unless you do these changes, so they're very important. Next, I'm going to go into my preferences, and I'm going to go under color management, and we need to enable color management. And what we need to do is make sure that our color input space is sRGB, and we need to apply an output transform to the renderer. So I'll check that. Transform type, we'll keep this as view transform, and the output transformation needs to be set at 2.2 gamma. So just save that, and that means that we're basically ready to go. But first we need to add our render passes. So I'll just go into my render settings and go to render elements. So first of all I'm just going to add a lighting pass, I'm going to add a global illumination pass, a reflection pass, and a refraction pass. So there's reflection, refraction. We need to add a specular pass, so just add those. If you're using anything that's got subsurface scattering, you need to add a subsurface scattering pass and a self-illumination pass as well. So this is for things like your sky dome and things like that, so I'll just add that. If you're using caustics in your scene, you need to add a caustics pass as well. I'm going to add a atmosphere pass because this scene does have some atmospheric scattering. And I'm going to add a VRay background as well, which I don't think is important in this scene, but it's good to add it anyway. So these are going to be the core render passes that we're always going to use. Of course, if you want to render anything out extra, you can go ahead and do that. So we've not added our Z depth pass for this or our velocity pass. I'm just basically going to rebuild the beauty pass. So obviously add any extra passes that you want. So I'm actually just going to render this out. Because we're going to be rebuilding these passes inside of After Effects, it doesn't handle EXR files too well, so I'm going to change the image format to a TIFF file, and under image format options I'm going to change this to 16-bit half float and just hit close, and I think we're ready to go. I'm just going to render one still at 1080p, so I'll just change my resolution and just make sure the renderable camera is correct, and I think we're good to go. So I'm just going to hit render now and I'll come back once we're done. Okay, and that's just finished rendering now. So if I just minimize out of Maya, you can see I've got all my separate passes here. I've opted to render two separate TIFFs instead of a multi-channel EXR because we're going to be comping this in After Effects. If you were using a program like Nuke or Fusion, you might want to render multi-channel EXRs as it's just a little bit cleaner. So before we import these into After Effects, there's just a few changes I wanted to make to After Effects so it'll all work properly. So we just need to go down into the project window here where it says 8 bits per channel, and we need to change this depth to 16 bits per channel, and just click this little checkbox that says linearize working space. So press OK there, and then we can go ahead and just drag in our renders. So I'll just drag them straight into the project window, and I'm just going to get the beauty pass and drag it onto the new comp icon. So it just builds a comp for us, and I'm just going to turn this layer off because we're only going to use it for reference to see if our layers match the beauty pass. So now I'm just going to select all of the render passes and drag them below the beauty pass, and all we really need to do now is just change the mode to add, and it's basically as simple as that. With the mode set to add, all of these layers are basically just being added together, and I'm going to enable the beauty pass now and it should match perfectly. So there you go, there is no difference between those. So there you go, it does match perfectly. If it doesn't match perfectly, then you've done something wrong. So you might have to go back to Maya and change some of your settings. So it's a good idea to render out some low res tests before you render your high resolution final renders. So now I'm going to just show you some of the things that we can do because we've rebuilt the beauty pass. So say I wasn't happy with the specular highlights here. Well, I can always just go into the specular pass now and change the opacity of that. And you can see that's having a direct effect on that. We can actually just turn the specular off if we want. You can turn any layer off that you want, so I can turn off the lighting completely there. So it just gives you tons of flexibility afterwards. You could even color correct things like the GI, or if I wanted to, I could go into the atmosphere here and add a levels. So I'll just drop a levels effect onto the atmosphere. And if I start to tweak this now, you can see I can really bring up the atmospheric scattering. And if I wanted to change this before, it would probably be a re-render. But because I've rebuilt the beauty pass in this way, we don't have to re-render it. We can just tweak the layers. So I hope that demonstrates the power of rebuilding the beauty pass. And that's basically it. If you enjoyed what you watched, please go and drop a subscribe on the YouTube channel, because it really helps us out. Or just go and drop us a like on the Facebook page, where all the 3D tips will usually get posted. But once again, thanks for watching. This has been the Yellow Dog 3D Tips blog, and stay tuned for more 3D tips. Cheers!